All right, students, welcome back to another live stream. It's been a while since we've been on, but we're here, we're back. We're here to talk about some exciting stuff today and hopefully give you guys some insight into some recent college admissions decisions. For those that haven't been on the live streams before, I'm Chase. And yeah, again, welcome to Star Tutors live stream. If you guys have any questions for us, especially if you're on live, you can post in the chat. If you have any questions after you're done, you can post below the video, below the live stream, and one of our teachers, tutors, myself included, will be able to get back to you. But again, welcome to the Star Tutors live stream. We're going to try to do these daily streams talking about anything that has to do with college admissions, with testing, and answering your questions. Shout out for any students out there that follow chess and chess streams. Shout out to Hikaru Nakamura for giving us this idea. I know it's a little bit different when you're live streaming chess, but for anybody that's a fan of chess and Hikaru, you guys can thank him for giving us this idea to stream this way. I think that it'll be pretty cool, and I think actually, oddly enough, test taking actually sets up pretty similarly to chess in being able to go back and forth between a practice test. So if you guys have any questions about practice testing, anything along those lines, please don't hesitate to ask us questions about those as well. So if you are on live, guys, if you're on the live stream today, can you guys just give me a thumbs up in the chat? Let me know that you're here, that you're ready to go, and we should be all set here in just a second. Okay, so just a thumbs up in the chat or thumbs up below the video, and again, hopefully we'll be in good shape. All right, any preliminary questions today, guys? We're going to discuss the MIT decision to make the tests, the SAT and the ACT required once again. A very interesting decision, and I think we're going to play it. We're going to play it with Georgetown as well, because Georgetown had some interesting stats on that front as well. And so again, if you guys have any questions as we go through this, let me know. You guys can see the chat up there. Hopefully everybody's able to submit questions when you have them. And yeah, guys, we'll get started from there. All right. Great. Let's see if there's anything else I want to do. Guys, can everybody hear me okay? It looks like we're having some, we might have some streaming quality stuff. So if you guys can't hear me, just make sure that you type it in the chat. Again, thumbs up in the chat or thumbs up below the video if you're ready to go. Speaking of chess, by the way, for anybody that just heard my intro, some big news out of the chess community. So if you guys are following that chess drama with the cheating and stuff, I'm sure you'll get another video from those chess streamers here pretty soon. So hopefully that'll be very interesting. Yeah, how can you improve your SAT scores, guys? We have a lot of videos, so if you have any general questions about SAT, ACT, we can do that as well. We can talk about that as well, but we have a lot of videos below this video with all of our playlists for the SAT. I'd start there. The other thing that I would do that I think is really, really critical and important, guys, we have a lot of access for you on our app, Star U. So if you guys haven't downloaded Star U, you guys can see that in the background. Star U, download in App Store or Google Play. Okay, so that's where I would start, or give you guys the address then for the website. So I would start there. Again, there's a lot of cool features. There's hundreds of practice lessons, thousands of practice questions. I know you guys have that on the on Khan Academy as well, but again, nothing can hurt to just be doing some more, so you guys can access Star U. If you don't want to access that, I understand. Thank you, YG. Thank you. That's great. I love it. I love the YG. I love the support. Thank you. It's always great to see and great to hear that you guys are using it. So again, guys, I would definitely download Star U. It's pretty easy to access, pretty easy to use, and I think that if you get more free practice problems, there's nothing against that. So definitely check that stuff out. And then again, if you guys want to check out any of our SAT videos where I take these tests in real time, you can do that. You can click the links below. we have all those ready to go for you guys. So hopefully that's relatively easy and relatively straightforward. Okay, guys, but the purpose of today's video is more about the college front. So anybody, thumbs up, guys. Thumbs up for those that are watching live. Thumbs up if you guys know about the situation with MIT. I know we're a little late to the game here. We've been doing a lot of different things, but like I said, we're going to try to make these daily live streams much more frequent and much more accessible. So hopefully you guys can see this here on the screen. Okay, yeah, YG, great. So I just saw that comment, guys. If you guys are seeing this, awesome. Yeah, story about, going from a 26 out of 44 to 34 out of 44. Guys, the app is especially great for writing in language, as YG's comment just said. It's particularly great for writing in language. So if you're going to use it, and math for that matter, because there's a lot of practice problems, and it breaks down how to do those practice problems. So yeah, if you guys are going to use the app, reading to a certain extent, but reading is a little bit more volatile for SAT students. It's up and down because you have to be really focused, right? I mean, so much of the reading test is about focus, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. But hopefully the other three sections of the SAT are pretty standard, pretty straightforward from there. Is that cool? All right, again, but today, guys, I want to talk a little bit about this MIT. So this happened a couple months ago, 3 or 4 months ago. MIT, you guys can see it here. Stuart Schmill is the Dean of Students at MIT. We get a lot of questions about MIT for one reason or another. But you can see here, right, an MIT's decision to reinstate the SAT requirement. I want to start out by saying two things. And again, I think what these daily streams that we're going to try to do can help everybody with is I'll give my perspective as a test, doing this for as long as I have, seeing the test for as long as I have, seeing as many students as I have, going to different colleges. We have students at MIT right now currently that participate in our programs. So I know what the rigor of SAT is and how difficult it can be, or of MIT rather, not SAT, MIT. And I just try to give my thoughts on some of these articles that we've seen. So again, MIT this year is going to require the admissions test, the SAT or the ACT for admissions. They're one of the first major universities to go back to required, right? Test optional has been the standard over the course of the last few years with regards to the pandemic and making it difficult. And I understand that for the pandemic front, it was very difficult to even take these tests. So from that point, test optional, I totally understand. I also understand it for certain majors. Okay, so in terms of test optional, we've actually been big proponents. For those that use Star U, YG's comment is a good one. We're trying to make this all more accessible to all of you guys. I think that if everybody starts at the same level and everybody has the access, right, to this stuff, it's really about who works the hardest, right? And that's a huge component of this, and as it should be, right? That's something that should definitely be a component. So those are all things that I believe in, and I believe these tests do work, and you'll see that as part of the article today. But again, guys, as we go through this stuff, if you have any questions about this or about my perspective on it, I'll try to give those things as well. But again, MIT this year reinstated the SAT and the ACT requirement. And the article is linked, by the way, guys, in the description below. So thumbs up if you guys just click that show more button, you guys will see the article link. So if you want to check it out, you can. But basically, right, it's MIT has always been a requirement, has always been test required, and there's really good reasons for that. I think there's a lot of outside noise. The second part of the stream today, I'm going to talk about some criticism that I have of top colleges and not being upfront with you. Part of the reason that the SAT and the ACT gets a bad name, right, and a bad rap is not because of the test itself. And in fact, the test itself creates a lot of equitability. For anybody that's out of the country right now, if you're not in the United States and you're applying to American universities, the SAT and the ACT are a huge factor in helping international students. So that's the first thing. Because international students, otherwise the United States colleges don't have a great sense necessarily of your curriculum in different countries. That's just like I don't have a great sense of a lot of other, with the exception of maybe India and their curriculum, school curriculum. Other than that, I probably have no idea outside of the United States, anybody else. And that's just because we've worked with a lot of students from India over the years. So again, these tests really help international students, and they really help low-income students. And you're going to see that despite what you hear and all that kind of stuff, these tests can be really, really beneficial, as can AP tests. And I'm a big believer in the AP exams as well, because theoretically, guys, if you think about it, with an AP test, you for the price of $60, and I realize that that's a lot of money for a lot of people to pay $60 to take a test. But if you take the AP exam and you get a 5, you just test out. For $90, you just test out of a college class. You just get credit for that. And so that college class probably costs, I don't know, $5,000-$6,000 for the semester. That's how crazy expensive these top colleges have become. And if you take the AP Calculus BC exam, even at Harvard, MIT might be the only one that, I don't know what MIT's policy is on the calc exam or the physics exam, but at Harvard you can take that and you test out of general education math. So you're out of a full class. So that's again why I'm a huge believer in these tests. I actually do think that they create equitability that's not there if you don't. You're going to see from this article that the whole system, right? The whole system has problems with equality. The whole college system. It's not just the SAT and the ACT. And the SAT and the ACT, oddly enough, the reason that I think it gets a bad rap or a bad name is because it's so easy to point to a score. But MIT breaks it down pretty well here. And again, I encourage you to read the entire article because the Dean of Admissions breaks it down pretty well. Oh, that's awesome. Ohene, I think I'm pronouncing that right, hopefully. Ohene, that's unbelievable. Again, guys, when we see comments like that, if you guys see the comment in the chat, just pass by to say thanks for all your help and got a 1530 on the SAT with an 800 on math. I mean, like, that's why we do these streams. That's why we create this technology and this content for you guys. YG, same thing. I can't tell you how much it means to me when you guys make those comments. So please, if you do have any feedback for us and particularly positive feedback, I'd love to hear it. So thank you. That's awesome, guys. I can't tell you how awesome that is and how big of a difference it can make for both me and for you guys, right, as you guys go on. But in any case, let's go through this. So it says whoever's interviewing, it's from MIT. It's an article at MIT.org, so I think it's probably just a student newspaper. So the question is, why is MIT reinstating its ACT-SAT requirement? Okay, so this is the Dean of Admissions, right? Stuart Schmill is the Dean of Admissions at MIT. Just trying to go through a little bit. First, let me talk about why we have an SAT requirement in the first place. We dedicate a research analysis team. So they do a lot of research, right? They did a lot of research to see if this was even necessary to bring back. And they came back with very clearly that it is, right? And there's reasons for that. So in short, our research has shown that in most cases, we cannot reliably predict students will do well at MIT unless we consider standardized test results alongside, and that's key, right? Alongside grades, coursework, and other factors. These findings are statistically robust. This has been true, guys. Test taking, there's been so much political, right, on both sides of if you follow American politics, on both sides, there's so much politics that go into these tests that it's hard to really get a real answer. But if you really break down the data, and this goes for junior colleges, for military personnel, for standardized testing, it's not always the same standardized test, but just say that everybody takes the same test going into the military. For junior colleges, military personnel, top universities like MIT, there has been a robust, unbelievable sample size that says testing is great for considering whether or not a student will get through that course. And I'll tell you exactly why. This has nothing to do, the reason I know that, it has nothing to do, oh, Hannah, great, for all you to all my juniors, I love it. Okay, if you have, yeah, great. I love any referrals, guys, for the channel, for the app, I love it. I always appreciate it. Okay. But guys, again, as we go through this, when you go to MIT, and again, there's a lot of students that, let me tell you what happens on a Saturday morning. Okay, and this is at any college, but MIT, right? Saturday morning, you will have a math final, right? I don't know why, but math finals seem to be universally on Saturday mornings. And I don't know if the SAT and the ACT do this on purpose, but you'll have you'll have a math final in college, right? College math final. And you'd be amazed, but what's crazy is that, and thumbs up if you already knew this, did you know that college classes, major college classes, like big college classes, where you might have 300 students in a class, are graded on the exact same bell curve based on the class, right? Same bell curve that the SAT and the ACT is graded on. If you knew that, that's awesome. Thumbs up if you think that's pretty cool, right? The idea that you're not just taking this test to take it. When you go to class at MIT, if you take a 300-person math class your freshman year, you're going to be graded on the same curve, right? And the middle 50%, right, of that curve is a B minus. So you might take an engineering class and you get a B minus if you hit the average of the class. You take three final or three midterms and a final, right? And whatever the average is a B minus in the class. Okay, so that's how most colleges work, right? And then you have to be in the top 1% to get an A in the class, or top 5%, or whatever it is, right? Everybody thumbs up if that makes sense. Thumbs up, guys. If you're watching live, thumbs up, or if you're watching after, thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay, so you might have to get, right, you have to get in such a, but when you think about this, right, and you think about MIT, this is 50%, right? This is the average at 50% at MIT. If we take the bell curve, right, of the SAT and the ACT, and this is why the SAT and the ACT are still so important, the SAT middle 50% I think is like 980 now, right? So if you get a 980 on the SAT, you're right in the middle of the 50% of all students that take that. Does everybody see that if you go to MIT, this average right here, right, this MIT average, okay, if we apply that, that's like all of the students on the SAT that are way over here, that are scoring 1,500 plus scores. So that means you have to be in the top 5% of the top students that go to MIT in order to do that. And so the reason I think why he's saying this, right, why this Dean Schmill is saying this, is because alongside these, if you take that math final and you're not a good test taker, right, and you go to MIT, this is not true of all majors, but if you're a math major at MIT, that you are competing with the top students in the country, in the world, that are the best math students in the world. Okay, and so if you're not capable of sitting through a long test, you're frankly, you're not going to do well on that test at MIT. That doesn't mean you're not a smart person. That doesn't mean that you're not going to succeed in life. It just means that you're not going to do well on that math test when you have the best test takers in the world also taking the same math test, and you're graded on MIT's 50% curve. Does everybody see that? Right? This 50% curve is like this middle, all of this out here. Okay? And that's why it's still so critical, right? Alongside those. And so what MIT definitely doesn't want to do, they'll take all the backlash, right, in terms of not admitting students, having a really low admissions rate, all the stuff that goes into this. They'll accept that more than they'll accept taking in a student who then fails out in 1 year because they weren't prepared to go to MIT. That is ultimately, guys, this is a perfect breakdown mathematically of why, of realistically, right, this bell curve, of realistically why the SAT and the ACT are absolutely critical at a school like MIT and really at any technical university, or if you're going into an engineering program anywhere. This is why this is so critical. And he even admits it, right? Dr. Schmill says it, right? And the math component of the testing turns out to be the most important. Well, no wonder, right? If you go to MIT, 99% of you that go to MIT are going to study math or science, right? Probably physics, some type of math or science. So if the math component is low, even if you get a great English score, that's not great for MIT. It might be great if you're an English major at Harvard, but not great when you're going to the world's best technical college, right? And you have to be good at those things. Thumbs up, guys, if that all makes sense as we keep going through this. And again, I have to say this, that it bothers me because I love test taking. And I don't love it in the sense of like I love to take tests. I just love the idea of it and decision making. And if you've watched any of our other videos and if you've been on the app, all of our stuff is trying to get you guys to be the best decision makers possible, right? Moving on from questions that don't immediately make sense so that you're not sacrificing time and effort when there are more questions after that one hard question that are easy to do, right? That's the idea. So that's why I love test taking. And so it bothers me when these tests, not just the SAT and the ACT, but the AP exams, when students, or rather when parents really don't understand, or admissions directors don't understand why these are so important, it bothers me in a lot of ways because it's categorically, at least for technical, right, math and physics, right, math and science classes, it is absolutely so important. All right, guys. So again, thumbs up in the chat if that all makes sense, or thumbs up below the video if you guys if that makes sense. If at any point you guys are watching this video after and want to make a comment, please do so in the comment section below. If you like what you hear so far, definitely hit subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. We'd love to get more subscribers. But again, that's kind of the opening, right, of why this test is still so critical for MIT. All right, so let's see. Right here, right? I think I kind of talked about this. I hadn't read the article previous. I just read the introduction. So Our general institute requirements demand that first years must take or place out of through right advanced standing examination. That's what I was talking about with the APs. You can even no, so you can even place out of AP exams. You can place out of classes for a $90 AP test. You can place out of classes even at MIT. Okay, even math classes at MIT. That's how crazy and effective those AP exams can be, right? In terms of saving money. So in a way, it is not surprising that the SAT are predictive of success. It would be more surprising if they weren't. Yeah, Pat, does that include a rigorous foundation? Then there's no pathway, right? There is no pathway through MIT that does not include a rigorous foundation in mathematics mediated by many quantitative exams along the way. That's the point. The SAT is not nearly as difficult as a test you'd see at MIT, but it is. There are quantitative exams all the way through this test, all the way through MIT. And if you're not capable of doing well on any quantitative exam, it's very unlikely you're going to do well at MIT. And that's the reason, right? That's the reason. Let's see. Specific health conditions. What do you say? Yeah, so right, what do you say to who argue the test creates structural barriers for socioeconomically disadvantaged or underrepresented students, guys? Right, and that's kind of always been the downside of these tests, and unfortunately, people do take advantage of them. We haven't done a video yet, but we might in the future of like how many of you guys have heard of all the whole college admission scandal? I mean, it was international news, which was crazy, but it was international news, right? And we had parents and students who were gaming the system, who were taking advantage of the system. Anybody hear about that? Thumbs up if you've heard about that. Right? They're taking advantage of the system and they were cheating on the SAT and the ACT. So but guys, there are 2 million students that take it. And yes, there are a handful of bad eggs, but that doesn't mean that those 20 people should dictate a test that's really good for a lot of students, right? So as we go through this, right, I appreciate this question, which we kept, and so underrepresented students, right, the SAT takes a lot of the blame for that. It's crazy that SAT is giving all this stuff away for the Khan Academy. I mean, they're not in it to make money. The SAT, at least. I don't know about the ACT, right? There's some things in the ACT that are a little sketchy, like the fact that they hire Kaplan and they charge you like $800. The SAT doing stuff with Khan Academy is unreal. So that's like they're trying, right? The SAT is trying to make this more equitable, which we have kept foremost, right? Strong commitment to diversity, and it is important that we minimize unfair barriers to our applicants, right? So that's always a good thing. Okay. Let's see that I'm taking this. That's awesome. So Firik, yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for the comment. Yeah, keep working, guys. Yeah, October, December. If you're a senior, good luck. Full ride scholarship. That's awesome. 32. You got to keep it up. Focus on the English section. Okay, English and maybe science. English and science generally on the ACT guys are probably the fastest to improve. English is the most consistent to improve. So definitely focus on those two before this October test because it's only 2 days away. If you focus on those two, I think you can. Right, it's all an average. So great job. Let's see, guys. Can anybody post? Somebody a link? If you guys have a link to ACT exams, I know they're on Reddit. Just that last comment. If anybody has the ACT exam, like a link to a Dropbox for ACT PDFs. That would be awesome if you guys want to post that just in the comment section there. Okay. However, what we found is that we use the SAT increase access. Yeah, ACT as you can go all aspects of it. Yeah. So guys, this is another thing that's often overlooked, right? The MIT is looking for you to take AP classes, right? Whether you test out of them or not, they're looking for this, and this says it right here. Low-income students, underrepresented students of color, and other disadvantaged populations often do not attend schools that offer advanced coursework. There are a lot of schools in the United States and internationally that don't offer AP exams, right? And so in that way, you're basically unable to take the AP test, and that's where the SAT becomes even more important because if you don't have those offered, right? And you don't even there's no other way to make that up, really, right? Otherwise, you're gonna have to take the AP class by yourself. You have to read a book and then take a test that you had never taken the class for. So that's a big thing as well. Okay. Meanwhile, we know the pandemic is a disrespectful. We have really starting to make it true. Okay, so there are challenges, right? Ignore the challenges. I think the SAT, the College Board, for as bad of a rap as they get, they've done an unbelievable job with offering more access to students through Khan Academy. I think what Khan Academy is trying to do is great. I think that they're still, compared to our videos and like the engagement, I think that there are still things that they can be doing better. which is why I like our app a little bit better and certain components of our videos better. But we're all trying to make this more equitable for everybody. And I love, again, these comments from students that have used our stuff before and have done really well and getting into these dream colleges, scholarships. It makes all the difference in the world for us. So thanks for those comments, guys. Like access to, yeah, so this is the other thing, right? Unfortunately, unequal all aspects of secondary are in this country, right? There's inequality in everything you do as it relates to college admissions. If you have more money, this is the big one, right? Like access to fancy internships or expensive extracurriculars. As you guys would imagine, doing individual tutoring before, we've had access to students that have some resumes, right? Resumes that are unbelievable. Like I can't even imagine how much money it would cost to create the application that they have, right? Like to do the things that they've done. That's so unfair. That has everything to do with money. Everything to do with money. The SAT doesn't have anything to do with money, right? You can get a waiver to take the SAT for free. If you are so low income that you can't take it without the waiver, you can get a waiver. So everybody can take the SAT test for $50 or no money, right? And everybody's graded on the same level. And that's the part that frustrates me. It's like, yeah, the whole thing is unequal, right? I mean, like, we know that. There are so many students that apply to these universities now. It's like there's 250,000 students that apply to the UC, University of California school system. There's got to be some way to break that down. And what bothers me is that you get the blame on the SAT and the ACT, and this doesn't have anything to do with us being about the SAT and the ACT. It's just like it's got to be blamed somewhere else, right? I mean, like, right? I think. And so that's my take on that. Can't force their high school, right? You can't. So, but they usually can't force their high school, right? That's the whole point. Okay, you can't force your high school to do that. So that it's way harder to force your high school to get an AP class than it is to take the SAT. That's going to be offered somewhere near you. It's offered everywhere in the U.S., every state, every city, somewhere within an hour. I think is their policy that you can drive within an hour and take the SAT somewhere. What do you think this impact reinstatement will be on your office and on MIT? My hope is that it will help us recruit, select, and enroll robustly. Yes. So before the pandemic, considering testing, alongside other factors, helped us expand access to MIT, and we're very proud of the diversity and talent. Yeah, I mean, MIT is unbelievable, right? There's a reason. They've figured it out. I don't think you have to question MIT and their data analytics to figure out, right? I mean, I don't. If you're a data analyst, right, a data scientist, from MIT, I don't think you're struggling to understand math and statistics. Right, so I think if anybody's capable of running a study that says whether or not these tests are needed for a school like MIT, and frankly for a lot of schools, I think that's awesome, and this is really cool. I think this is a cool ending to the article. I just noticed this out of the corner of my eye. Nearly 20% of our students are first generation in their family to attend college. That's unbelievable work ethic. I can't tell you. We work with a lot of students from a lot of different places in the world. If you're a first-generation student trying to attend college, I know that it's really, really hard for you. For those students, you have to have so much initiative and ambition because it's not necessarily top of mind. And for parents that didn't go to college and that are pushing their students to go to college, unreal. You guys are the best. You guys are sweet. That's awesome. You keep it up, right? And it sounds like this guy's pretty cool, right? He was a first-generation college student himself, and is now the dean of admissions. I would imagine he probably went to MIT, if I had to guess, but maybe not. But usually, right, if you're the dean of admissions at a school, typically they also went to the school, but who knows? So, guys, thumbs up if that makes sense. Anybody have any questions on that? I saw some comments, right, about the ACT this coming weekend. If you guys have any questions about ACT, SAT testing, I'm, of course, happy to answer those as well. And then I'm going to jump into another article that I found on Georgetown. And this is where, like, this next article that you guys are going to see, this is where, like, colleges are so deceiving. It's so irritating sometimes because I just think that they, like, deceive students so that they get, better analytics, better stats. I don't think that they're, to a certain extent, the article I'm about to pull up is it's also from Georgetown. So the Georgetown, whoever wrote it is from the Georgetown, like, student newspaper. So, yeah, SAT subject tests, guys, I wouldn't worry about SAT subject tests. I don't think that those are going to be a thing anywhere anymore. I don't even know if they still offer them. They cut out the essay altogether. Yeah, Emmanuel Peter, it's a good question, and it's going to be brought up. I won't get into it too much, but it's getting brought into the Supreme Court this year. So Emmanuel, it's a good question, and there's also a lawsuit in the state of California for Asian American students and why for that exact question. Again, I won't try to get into it too much on this stream, but it will. There's going to be some decisive court rulings. California did away with all SAT and ACT testing, which basically made no sense. And yeah, it is a decent question there. Um, Certainly, guys. But anything that deals with college admissions, what I'll say is, from a positivity standpoint, don't let outside sources affect you. Right? Learn as much as you can. Figure out what you need to do to put your best foot forward. That's going to be different for every single student. All right, and then go from there. Does that make sense, guys? It kind of opens the door to what I'm going to talk about in this next article, right? But just put your best foot forward, right? I mean, like, again, these comments that are coming from students that have done the app, that have watched our videos, that have done well. It's like that's all. That's like all the thing in the world for me, because it means that those students are working as hard as they can. And I don't know, anybody that's commented already that you got a 32 on the test or whatever. That's awesome. I don't know if that means you're going to get into the college of your dreams, but I do know that it presents you with a better opportunity, right? Can everybody give me a thumbs up either below the video or in the chat if that makes sense, right? That who knows? College admissions is so wacky to begin with, right? It's just like something could happen, something might not happen, um, but it's one of those things, guys, that you just put your best foot forward, and I think that that's all you can ask of yourself, and then kind of let the chips fall where they may. But it's so critical because don't get down on the idea that if you don't get into MIT, you still did well enough to get in, right? Push yourself then to keep having that mindset. If you're that good of a student, technically, right? If you're that good of a science and math student to even have a chance to get into MIT, you're gonna have a pretty successful life. I can pretty much guarantee that. Okay, so again, don't let that affect you if you're worried about college admissions and where you're going to go. If you have a chance at these top schools and you have a legitimate chance, even if you don't get in, it's not like that changes you as a person. You still knew enough information and had enough knowledge to go to those. It just, for whatever reason, that year or that day or whatever the other wacky stats that they use to let students in, just didn't work out in your favor. But that doesn't mean something's not going to work out in your favor in the future. Okay, so again, thumbs up, guys, if that all makes sense. So the second one I want to talk about, second article that I found that I think is really important, and this is what bothers me. I think MIT, and this is true of MIT, and they certainly don't need my kudos. They don't need my appreciation of how good of a school it is. I think that they've done enough on their own to deserve that and warrant that. But again, I think that article, if you guys want to check it out in the whatever description, I think that did a pretty good job of explaining why those things are so critical. This is what irritates me, guys. So I found this article on Georgetown to try to compare it against this, and everyone talks about right. It talks about this test optional. So this kind of goes into this test optional idea. This article is from about a year ago, and I used this when talking to parents and students, but it's irritating, I think, that the perception, right? So this is really about test optional. That the perception from students, we hear from a lot of students that are like, well, it's test optional, so I don't need to take a test. Yeah, but that's also limiting your options, right? And what you're going to find in this article, and it's also posted in the description below, what you're going to find in this article, it's limiting your options and in a major way, because colleges, and this stinks to read articles like this and to think about the data. If you just think about the stats that I'm about to show you guys, it's irritating that these aren't more widely released, because the whole narrative around test optional was like, it's all about, equity and equality and all this stuff, which is great. Like, if it was really about that, then that's awesome, right? Like, if that was really the thing, I think that's awesome. But as is typical with most things that sound too good to be true, right? Like, that would make it sound like they figured out, equality of college admissions in 6 months, basically. They haven't done it in 50 years or 60 years since everything became so competitive, but suddenly they just figured it out. And again, the data just doesn't support that. And that's what I appreciate about that MIT article, is that they laid it out, like why they did it the way that they did. So first of all, let's just start with this idea. GU admits just 12% of applicants, setting record low. Okay, so that's the article title. Very positive, right? This is Georgetown University. For those that know Georgetown, that's like very plus, right? Everybody likes Georgetown, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no, most people know that Georgetown's one of the top, I don't know, 25 universities in the world. Okay, so if you think about Georgetown, great. But that's a very, very positive heading, right? Headline for Georgetown. And when you break down the data that comes in the article after, and this is why I want more students to have access to this, just this general information. If you break down what the article actually says, there's a very, very deceptive, frankly, deceptive reason why that title is the way that it is and why colleges do this. Okay, so if you go down a little bit, and this is an article that I did read prior to the stream, applicants pool increased by 30%. Okay, so this year's applicants pool increased by 30%. All right, so let's say, for the record, guys, if you have 10,000 students that applied one year and it increases by 30%, the next year you have 13,000 students apply. You have 3,000 more. I don't know what Georgetown's exact numbers are, but if you had 20,000 students apply, right, you have 26,000, right? That 26,000 then that are applied the following year. Thumbs up, guys, if that makes sense. So increase of 30%. You're like, okay, well, they increased their applications by 30%, and then, right, acceptance rate has dropped to a new low. By the way, colleges, if they want one thing more than anything else, they want a low acceptance rate because it makes it look like it's more selective, right? So great. If that happened to Georgetown, awesome. Like Georgetown, that's happened to colleges in the past, right, where like something happens. Major USC is a good example of one. Texas A&M is a good example of one here in the U.S. So those two colleges had, for various reasons, had major upticks in admissions. The University of Texas had it. So two Texas schools, USC and in Southern California, had the same thing happen. But there are examples where there have been major upticks from one year to the next, and then those trends have continued. But it's rare, it's few and far between. All right, and what you go down, and again, this is not publicized to students, what they then end up saying later in the article. Right, so it says Georgetown admitted 1886 so they had 16,709 applicants, an 11.3 acceptance rate compared to last year's of 15.4. They dropped 4 percentage points in acceptance rates. That is insane. Like I said, it has happened before, but it's been for a very defined reason, and sometimes reasons that you wouldn't think, like football teams get better, like USC if you like American football, USC or in the early 2000s had this happen. Right, where their football team was really good. Texas and Texas A&M had that happen. Alabama has had that happen. So for reasons that are not necessarily because of academics, although they are as well, right? Then schools get more funding, more money. All of those things play a factor, but there are reasons for that, right? And all of these schools then get more students. They become even better. All of those schools I just mentioned are great schools, awesome academic schools now because they have all this new funding, all this kind of stuff. So there are reasons that this does happen. It's not to say that this has never happened ever, but there's always like a pretty defined trend. And Georgetown, for the record, hasn't really had that trend, right? And this is coming on a pandemic year. So if anything, you'd be thinking like, wouldn't they, not as many students went to college? For the record, guys, did you know that colleges, the number of students at college, right? Number of number of college students. Okay, this is why this is so deceptive. The number of college students this year, I'll have to get to the exact number. If anybody wants to look that up, the number of college students this year in America for American universities dropped for the first time like in the last 30 years. There's some stat on it. I can't remember exactly, but it's lower. So that means that fewer students were applying, right? If fewer students were applying, and you'd think like, okay, if fewer students are applying, wouldn't the acceptance rates have to go up because colleges have to be less selective, right? They need a certain number of students to meet their budget. They have to have a certain number of students paying in each year to meet their budget that they've already budgeted 2 or 3 years in advance. So the number of college students, wouldn't that have to then go, if that went down, wouldn't the acceptance rates go up, right? Because there's not as many people to choose from and you want to make sure that you accept more so that you actually fill the budget. That's what you'd think. That would be the logical trend of that. But now Georgetown, number of college students has plummeted. Oh, this is nationwide, yet the acceptance rates have also gone down. And that doesn't make a lot of sense logically from a statistical standpoint. Well, there's a reason for that, right? It fell for 30% increase, but also because the university had enrollment of 1,500 first-year students, a decrease from last year's students. There you go. Georgetown is even saying that their student population decreased, right? So but that would mean that if they needed to accept the same number of people from that, they would have to. So again, the acceptance rate would then go up. You'd have to accept more students to guarantee that you hit certain numbers, right? That's what you'd think because there's just a lower applicant pool. Does that make sense, guys? Thumbs up if that makes sense. If we go down here, though, this is the part that's irritating, right? This is the part that bothers me. Where did it say this? Okay, so here we go. Unlike previous years, students were not required to submit SAT or ACT test scores. And I want the point of bringing up this article, guys, and in light of the MIT article that we just went through, is to show you what I'm talking about. And I don't know if they're doing this. I don't know if colleges. It's not just Georgetown, by the way. And I appreciate the article. It's a lot of colleges. Okay, this is very deceptive. To submit, so unlike previous years, students were not required to submit SAT or ACT scores with their applications in an effort to increase flexibility, right, and equality in the process. I get that, okay? So I understand that. But we're still encouraged to do so. Don't have to do it, though. A lot of people want to go to Georgetown. Despite this change, over 80% of applicants did submit a test. So think about that, 80%. And just under 90%, so that's a higher number, were admitted. So already, the 10% of applicants, you can just see the numbers, and this is why it irritates me. If you have 18,000 students, right, and 80% submitted applications, 80%, right, that would mean that you'd have how many? You'd have, what's 80%? 20% of that is 3,600, so you'd have 14,600 that did submit, and 20, did I get that right? No, 3,600, right? 3,600, 14,400. 3,600 that did not submit. But of the students that were admitted, 90%. That means that those numbers aren't right. So 3,600 students didn't submit a test score. Okay, in years past, the test when students saw that number, right, when they saw the number of that you'd have to get in order to go to that school, you just didn't submit a test score. If you were way lower than that, you just didn't submit a test score. But this time, they have 3,600 students out of a possible, I think it was about 18,000, right? 1,500 were accepted, so maybe 17,000 students, something like 18,000 students applied, and 3,600 of those students did not submit a test score. Just under 90%, 89% or so of students that were admitted did submit a test score. So what that tells me, guys, is of these 3,600 students, right, only 10% of those students were accepted, right? Only 10%. Because 90%, was that right? 10%? I think that's right? 10% of those, I think. Yeah, I think right, because the difference between 80 and 90%, which means that only 360 students were admitted without a test score. That can't be right. There are 3,600, this is how it is, right? There are 10%, right, that did not submit a test score. There's 18,000 total. And there were 1,500 acceptances, or let's say there were probably 2,000 because some people were going to decline that. So there were, 200? So 200 out of 3,600 people that did not submit a test score, roughly speaking, right, these are all rough numbers, right, were accepted without a test score. Meaning that those other 3,400 students, right, just submitted an $80 application with a 10% chance of getting into the school. While the students that did submit a test score had a 90, is that right? Yeah, had a 90% chance. No, sorry. The students that did submit a test score had a much higher chance. Let's just say that, right? I'm not exactly sure what the numbers are, but a much higher chance of getting in. Because so many students that were actually admitted did submit a test score. And this is what's irritating, is that is not, right, the College Board discontinued, right, here's the question for somebody that was earlier, SciComm maybe, right, discontinued SAT subject test, so yeah, College Board has gotten rid of subject tests, that's actually right on point there. But guys, the point of this article is to say that 90% of students at Georgetown submitted a test score that were admitted to the school. So when these acceptance rates drop, it's not because they all of a sudden had this crazy new thing that happened, it's because they got a bunch of students to submit a test score, to submit their application, spend $80 without a test score, with a very, very low likelihood of getting into the school. And that's what's troubling or bothersome to me, is that if you knew this data, right, the chances that you'd only apply to schools where you did submit a test score are pretty high. Can everybody give me a thumbs up? This is not a knock against Georgetown necessarily. It's just a knock against how non-transparent, right? How the lack of transparency in college admissions. Yes, all of this is publicly available, but how many times is something like this covered, right? How many times do students actually know about this? So that's like, it's, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is like, that kind of irritates me, right? I mean, right? I don't know, right? Shouldn't that be like something that's mentioned somewhere? Like, oh yeah, our acceptance rates went up, our acceptance rates went down, our middle 50% of test scores went up, right? Middle 50% went up, and so that's all positive. But oh wait, 90% of our students that were admitted to the school that actually got into the school did submit a test score. Test optional, really, for me, it means like should be 50-50, right? If it's test optional, it means like, yeah, you submitted, it could help you, it could not help you. What it really means in Georgetown's case is it really hurt you if you didn't submit a test score. Only 10% of students that didn't submit a test score got in, of the admitted students, right? So not submitting a test score really hurt you. I wish, for the purposes of money, if nothing else, I wish they would be more transparent with that, because if they were, we would all know, right, that, hey, I probably need to submit a test score at these top colleges. And that's where that test optional thing kind of goes weird, right? It's kind of deceiving, I think, from colleges and universities not to, acknowledge that when they say it in their own data, but they just don't want to say it too loudly because, they want to look good with the whole equitable thing. And I get that, but to then turn around and not really apply it is pretty crazy. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Anybody else have an opinion? Anybody in the chat? Maybe I'm crazy. I mean, I don't know enough about college admissions. I know quite a bit because obviously I do this every day, but the fact that the full article starts with just 12% of applicants setting record low, and then they have this huge chart and graph, and then the follow-up, though, at the very bottom of the article, right, is kind of crazy. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but if you guys have any opinions on that. Emmanuel, it kind of depends. Super score question for all these colleges and universities, a good question. Kind of depends on what your other scores are. If it's like 32-32 and you submit a super score, I don't know. If you have like a 34 and then a 36 super score, I probably just submit the 34. We'll maybe do another video in the future. But I think that Harvard came out with an article that said there's basically no statistical difference. Yeah, maybe it's a good one that we can do in the future. But I think they came out with an article that was like there's no statistical difference between a 34 and a 36. So it kind of depends. Does that make sense? So like Harvard accepted the same number of students that had a 34 on their ACT or comparable SAT score as they did students that had a 36. And so there was no statistical difference. It basically means that like once you got to a 34, yeah, it was great to get a 36, but they were the same numbers, 200 of these and 234. It'd be interesting to see how many students submitted with a 34, right, versus a 36. But Harvard did come out with an article that mentioned that. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. My dog wanted to come in. Does that make sense? So, I think that it kind of depends on what your other scores are. But yeah, I mean, hopefully that makes sense. I really think that the super score question always depends on which colleges you're applying to, what your individual test scores may have been, and just in kind of looking at it that way. If it were me. Yeah, again, good question. I think that, I think overall we can probably assume that 30, obviously a 36 super score is unbelievable, so you must have done really well. Is that fair to say, Emmanuel? You probably did really well on all of the regular tests, right? So if you got a 35, for example, and you super scored to a 36, just submit one 35 score, would be my opinion. If you have two 35s, right, and they super score to a 36, then submit both 35s, because then you're not hurt anyway. Yeah, so guys, next steps for after you get a certain score, right, 1550, awesome, first of all, Bishesh, great job with that score. That's unreal. It's a super, super great score. It all comes down, for next steps with college admissions, always comes down to... yeah, Emmanuel, that's awesome. I really appreciate. Thanks for the heads up that you used our programs. It's awesome. Please, not only help spread the word with that, but please, make sure that whenever that kind of stuff comes up, if you hear from me in the future, we always appreciate that, and it makes us want to do more for students in the future. So thank you again for that. Guys, in terms of what the next steps are for college admissions, it's mostly about your grades, right? So I always like to think of it for admissions purposes. Find a little bit of space here to write down some stuff. possible. But yeah, for admissions purposes, guys, I like to think about this as 1/3 test scores to top colleges, right? 1/3 test scores, and test scores are really important, even at test optional schools, as we just showed. 1/3 GPA. So GPA, let's just say GPA plus course difficulty, right? So if your GPA is a 4.0, but you didn't take any difficult classes, no AP classes, no honors classes, what does that really mean for colleges? I don't know. That's, it's kind of up to the college, I guess. 1/3 test scores, 1/3 GPA plus one plus course difficulty, and then 1/3 like extracurriculars, right? Extracurricular. This is my breakdown, guys. This is very general. I'd say work related, right? Work, essay. I don't think the essay. I think the essay, your college essays. I don't personally think that they factor in all that much, based on what I've seen. Maybe they do. I think if you're really creative and it stands out, but they read so many of these essays. I think college essay. I think your interest in the school, right? Interest in school, and this might break down interest in school. Maybe a better representation of this, guys, would be like this. Just so you guys, maybe it's not perfectly 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Maybe it's like, uh, because this bottom category, maybe it's 25%, 25%, and 50%, depending on the college. Maybe that's the average. At a school like MIT, I think that the grades and the test scores probably mean more. But I'd say this might be a better breakdown. So interest in school would be like if you apply early. I'm sure that you guys have seen some of the statistics. Like if you apply early, you can, you get a certain amount of like uptick because you applied early. If you did early decision, right, which means that you're kind of locked into where you're going, locked into that school. It shows that you're interested in that school, and that's why the admission standards at those schools. So if you do early decision, like at Northwestern, for example, which is a great school, right, top 25 school, you have a much higher likelihood of getting in because it's basically telling them, like, this is my number one school. So that also factors in. So that's kind of a rough estimate as to what applies. 3.64, yeah, guys. So 3.64 though depends on what so if you have a 3.64, but you're taking Vishesh, I would say that a 3.64 is a great score. Is actually a good GPA depending on your class load. Like if you have that GPA and you take a lot of hard classes, then that's awesome, right? That's fantastic. It really is, especially and if it's unweighted, right? That's another thing. They do like weighting and unweighted GPA in the U.S., which is also somewhat unfair. But again, all of those things, like I would say that's potentially a really good GPA, kind of depending on, right, this course difficulty idea. You got to make sure that you factor that in. Just for the record, guys, it is not just about GPA. It is not just about GPA. Don't look at your GPA and immediately get discouraged or feel like it's a bad GPA. It's about how difficult your classes are. So if you're an international student, it's still about how difficult your classes are. And all of these top colleges, especially, will have they know these curriculums. So if you're if you're in a different country, they'll be able to assess how hard your classes were as compared to an American curriculum or student. So don't worry, if you're an international student, they'll be able to figure that out. It's just about still, how hard are your classes? Does that make sense? Everybody hear that? Everybody good with that? Thumbs up, guys, if that makes sense. Because it's a great question, by the way, and it kind of applies to everybody that might be applying to some of these colleges. So great question there. Great question. Any others, guys? Any other questions? Emmanuel, helpful for APs if you self-study. If you self-study APs and then you take the class and then you take the test and you do well, it's unbelievable if you can do that. And if you do, yeah, that's helpful, right? It's more about the self-studying for APs is only helpful if if you get the score. Like realistically, the score is the most important thing on the AP exam. So if you can self study and get a 5, like that is unbelievable, and I would definitely include that in like your essay. There for all students on the Common Application, there'll be a little spot on the application that like allows you to write something that's like that's uh, somewhat unique about you personally. And if you get a 5 and you self study, you don't actually take the class for it, but you just self study and you get a 5, that is definitely something that I would include in that kind of like optional extra essay portion on the application. So when you see that, you'll know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so GPA guys, yeah, again, so Vishesh, yeah, I would say that again, sir, only GPA and SAT scores required. It's not just those two, right? These two are really important. That's test score, SAT, right, and GPA, and then all of your other activities. Emmanuel, I don't think so, right? I don't know that for sure, but if you get a 5 on Calc BC, I think that MIT was the only one, or Caltech would be the only one in question on that. I think that you are good. I think that a 5 on the BC exam, from what I just read in that MIT article, I think even at MIT, because at MIT it wouldn't be that they would be mad about a 5. They might just not give you credit. But it sounded like in that article that they even give credit for math if you get a 5 on the Calc BC exam. My guess is that it's probably for MIT or Caltech, it's probably only a 5, and it's only on the BC exam that they would accept that, right, as course credit. But my guess is that if you get a 5 on that, you test out of you basically get credit. You don't test out of it, you get credit, which means that you can effectively graduate early potentially and not pay the money. You graduate a semester early or whatever. You get credit for like 2 classes or whatever, 1 semester worth of that class. So yeah, good question. And I think that also applies to most students. If you're in the Calc BC 5 train, if you're on that, then I think that probably applies to a lot of students. Thumbs up, guys. Does that make sense? But yeah, good question. And certainly I would make sure that if you guys get a 5 on any test, um, just make sure that you are aware of that. Yeah, Emmanuel, that's the part that's tough, right? With the holistic admissions, which is basically like the other components. So you want to think about like this is quantitative, right? Maybe you can qualify these. This is 50% is quantitative, and 50% is qualitative or holistic, as Emmanuel just said, qualitative, right, or holistic. Guys, that's the one where I would just try to express yourself, the best version of you. And they always talk about bragging about stuff. I wouldn't necessarily brag. That kind of it's a bad worse use of the term bragging about yourself, whatever. I wouldn't use the term bragging about yourself. I just try to be as honest about what you've done, what you've accomplished, right, as a student as you can be. And it's not bragging. Think back to all the things that you've done in your high school career, and really think back about how many students would have accomplished that. For example, if you're like the math Olympiad national champion. We had a student who's actually now at MIT, ironically enough. A student a couple years ago who's now at MIT, who was the national math Olympiad champion, or was on the team for that. That's something that's very, very, you know, that's really, really important, I think, when thinking about it. So, yeah. Yeah, Jack. Yeah, good call. Yeah, that's definitely true, right? If you guys, I wouldn't look, Jack. That's a great point. For the record, guys, when you're thinking about which schools to apply to, whatever their middle 50% range is, right? The middle 50%, I 100% agree with that comment that Jack just made in the comment section. It's a good point. Take like 2 points off. Like if it's the ACT middle 50% of like 32 to 34, subtract 2 points from that on both ends of that, and that's probably really what your range of scores should be. I agree with you, Jack. I think there's a lot of deception going on with what schools are reporting as their middle 50%. So yeah, I definitely look into that, and don't let that base your decision. At some level, they're not that far off, right? So like if you get a 32 to 34 middle 50% range, this will make more sense once you start applying to colleges. It's not like that far off, probably, but it's 2 points. I bet. I bet it's -2. So 32 to 34 should probably be more like 30 to 32. If colleges weren't like, they're not manipulating the data, they're just presenting the data in a way that favors them. And we just saw that. with Georgetown, right? The article was saying like way lower acceptance rate. Look how great we are. And then if you look down and you read really through it and think about the data, there's probably a pretty good reason for why that acceptance rate went lower. They had more students apply than they've ever had before because they discontinued the requirement for this, so more students applied. Yet those students that didn't apply with a test score didn't have much of a chance to get in. Only 10% of the admitted students did not submit a test score, so it was very deceptive. They basically charged $80 to the majority of students that did not submit a test score, and without a very high likelihood of getting into the school. Certainly not the same likelihood as if you did submit a test score. Yeah, Manu, I wish I'd been around for 20 years. Not quite 20, maybe about 8 or 9. So I can't tell you exactly what 20 years ago would look like. I would have been really, really young at that age. But been around for about 8 or 9 years, so I can definitely comment on that. I haven't been around for 20 years, though. Hopefully I'm not that old. Since you've been around, can you describe the trend towards the thing towards holistic admissions and away from quantitative? Yeah, guys, I mean, the trend, I think, overall, right, is kind of what we talked about in the video. I think that there's been a trend away from that in the name of, equitability. I think that that's been proven on a number of different circumstances. It's certainly from MIT in the article that that we just presented about the dean. I think that that's proven to be a wildly inefficient and poor measure if you only include holistic admissions. And that's what, like, the University of California school system has basically done that, unfortunately. There's a lot of lawsuits against the state of California and the University of California admission systems because of it, because it's actually made it less equitable, or it's made it less of a standard. And so there's a lot of lawsuits that will come to one way or the other. We'll know what the verdict is of those within the next year. So I can't comment too much more on that, but there's certainly some there's been a trend more towards holistic admissions. In some ways, that is a good thing. It's just, some schools are just pushing it too far. There has to be some level of academic rigor, because when you go to that school, it's what MIT said, right? In that article, the dean said it word for word, and I appreciate how upfront he was, is if you go to MIT and you haven't proven that you can be a good test taker, you're just not going to do well at MIT, because there are so many tests that you have to take while you're a student at MIT. So again, there are good things about holistic admissions, but there's just too much. There's a push in too much of that direction. There has to be some barrier where there's a recognition that, test scores and GPA and hard classes in high school will make a difference when you get to college. And I 100% believe that, and couldn't agree with it more, to be honest. And that's almost word for word what the dean of MIT said. Is that cool? Guys, any other questions? Again, yeah, right. So Jack, you just said it yourself, right? And Jack, that's perfect, right? Jack, guys, if you can read Jack's comments, a good thing to go through, right? And it talks about what we talked about with the Georgetown situation. University of Miami openly says that the SAT range. So they're openly stating, just like Georgetown did. If you guys want to go back and watch that part of the video, we're going to come up with like smaller, right? We're going to come up with smaller videos that kind of break down each of the different topics we talked about today. So look out for that. But if you go back to earlier in this video, what Jack just said in the comment section is 100% right. Is like there's just deception in what the reporting of these statistics are. It's very open deception, right? So the thing that the colleges fall back on is like, well, we said it in this article. We said that 90%, right? We said it here. Georgetown says very openly, 90% of students, just under 90% of students did submit a test score, but we're test optional. So it's like, yeah, we included it, but we're going to pronounce that we're test optional for equitability, all this kind of stuff, make ourselves look good, make our acceptance rate go down. But in reality, it's not what it seems. And it sounds like the University of Miami is doing the same thing. It's like 1,500, but really it's 50 points lower. And to that point, remember when I said it was like 2 points lower on the ACT? 2 points on the ACT is like somewhere between 50 and 70 points on the SAT. So it's almost word for word what I was just saying about the ACT. 32 to 34 is really probably more like 30 to 32. Same thing with the SAT, just like what you said, right? 1390 down to 1310. is probably about 2 points on the ACT. So same range within the SAT as well. So yeah, guys, just look out for that, right? And consider it. It's not to say that it's not to put too much emphasis on colleges, and I don't want this to become really negative towards colleges, but I do want you guys to be thinking about this idea that like, hey, let me put my best foot forward. I'm going to do everything that I can. I'm going to knock out as many of these tests as I can. I'm going to crush this test. I'm going to do as well as I can. There's a lot of resources. If you guys are looking for resources, download Star U in the App Store, Google Play. I posted that at the very beginning of the chat. We have like thousands and thousands of hours of videos just listed below this video that you're watching now. So thousands of hours of SAT and ACT videos that I encourage you guys to watch. It will help you improve. You've seen it in the chat today. For those that have been watching all the way through, that students have come back and said, like, I did really well and I used Star U. It makes me so happy to hear that, but it's also just a true point. Like, we've designed this. All of our teachers and tutors are SAT and ACT tutors right now. And so all the curriculum, all the videos, everything that we're designing is based on what we're seeing from current students. And so to be able to use that, I do think that if you use that well and use it effectively, you're going to continue to do better, right? You can use it in a huge way for yourself. So anyway, guys, I'll end it there. You guys are doing great. Thank you for all the great questions. We're going to keep trying to do these daily live streams as often as we can. We're going to break down the videos, so there'll be more videos on the channel. But otherwise, guys, great job. Keep up the hard work as you guys keep looking for these college admissions. Keep putting your best foot forward. Keep working hard for the SAT and the ACT. And you guys are going to keep crushing it, I promise. That's all you can do. You put your best foot forward. You put your best application in, and let the chips fall where they may. And don't give yourself too hard of a time. If you're applying to MIT and you're in that range, you have a legitimate chance at MIT, then that doesn't need to affect you. You get in or you don't get in. You must be a brilliant math or science student. So look to the next thing and make it a point that you're gonna kind of show them like, hey, I should have been admitted, and I'm going to go to a different engineering school and I'm going to crush it there. So again, guys, I think that put your best foot forward. That's all you can ask of yourself. If you keep working hard, good things are going to happen. You guys are great. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please make sure that you do so. Otherwise, we'll see you guys soon for another daily live stream, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much, guys. Chase with Star Tutors. We'll see you for the next one soon.